redneck.
Hey, welcome back. This is the TD show. We're in our third segment. We're going to talk a little local sports, one of my favorite things. You know, I'm a Maycap County Hornet at heart, always will be. We're going to have a special guest, but before we get to that, I want to give you a little background. We've got the Class A tournament starting next weekend, the 18th. Playing over at Glasgow. Our boys and our girls will play at Glasgow. Glasgow's girls are really, really good this year. One of the better teams in the state, definitely one of the better teams in the region. Glasgow's boys are also pretty good. I think our boys do have a chance against the Glasgow boys. The girls, if they play to the best of their ability, they do have a chance to play them well. We're gonna talk to one of the great female coaches in Metcalfe County history, Miss Mary Lou Feast. She was a Lady Hornets coach. She took the Lady Hornets to state in '93 and '96. And we've got her on the line with us right now. Are you there, Miss Feast?
Yes, I am.
Hey, Miss Feast, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Are you?
Doing well. I hear you're watching a little league basketball game. Is that right?
That's right. I'm watching my godson. Actually, it's a 7th grade game.
7th grade game.
Okay.
Miss Feast, can you explain to our viewers what the Class A does, what the Class A is, and what Class A means to a small school like Metcalfe County?
Well, Class A for the small school, like you said, it is a great program for the small school because, you know, you have a big school, you cut kids, you usually have pretty good team, great team every year, or should, and most of the time, and when you're from a small school, you know, you just don't get the numbers out that you do in a big school, and this gives us a little edge in competition. I think it also helps us to get ready for the district and the region and all other competitions.
I agree. I think it's a great tool for getting ready for that environment you're going to experience in the district tournament and in the regional tournaments. Let me ask you about some of your teams. The way I remember it, I wasn't very old at the time, but I've always heard about it. 93 and 96, you were underdogs, went to play Monroe. And then later that year, you had to play Russellville in 93. Both of those teams were very good, very highly ranked. I think Monroe might have been number 2 in the state, went to the Final Four. What do you remember most about those runs back in 93 and 96 through the Class A state tournament?
Oh, in 93, we went to Russellville, and I can't remember how we got there right now. I just remember we went to Russellville. I can't remember who we beat. But at that time, I'll look it up to you the truth, but we did play Russellville in the finals, and Russellville was heavily favored. They were one of the top teams in Class A, predicted, I think, to be in the finals maybe. And anyway, we played them on their home court, went down and upset them. It's a close game. We swapped a lot of good point shots. They had a kid that was, just to see her just scared the fire out of the whole team just about it. When she got down in defensive position, she could just about smack the floor with her hands. Had a long arm girl, a good 3-point shooter, and her and Kelly McMurphy, they swapped a whole lot of 3-point shots during that game. But one of the things that stands out in my mind more than anything is before the game started, we had Anna Branstetter in the locker room, and I thought for some reason the game started late. And I thought the kids were going to tear the door off the locker room to get us out on the floor. And Anna was one of the big retail leaders. Of course, we had Hyde Coleman there. She was recovering from a wrong ACL, but of course she played better with the wrong ACL than most people play.
That's true.
But I just remember in the locker room, it was one of those games where the coach could kind of sit down and cross her legs and not do a whole lot, because the kids were ready to play. I mean, just and those two kids, Anna and Hattie, were it's so much stuff going in the locker room that determines whether or not we're going to win the ball game or not.
Yeah.
And that was one of those cases.
This is TJ Feast. You coached some great teams and great players. You've coached most of the top 5 scorers in Lady Hornets history. Is there a best team or best player in your mind?
Well, I would have to say, with what I coached, probably Hattie Colvin was the best player I ever coached.
And she's the #1 scorer in school history.
No, Karen Duncan's the #1 scorer in school history. Hattie was the #2 scorer in school history. Hattie made Parade Magazine. I've gone blank. She made All-American, Parade Magazine All-American.
Yeah.
All-American, yeah.
If you had to put 5 players on the floor and you could choose from any of the players that you coached, who would the 5 be?
Oh my lordy, TJ. I don't know if I could just pick 5 or not. That's rough.
All right, 6. You could have somebody coming off the bench. You could have 6 players, 5 and a bench player.
Well, Hattie would definitely be point guard, but I would have Kelly Worker out there someplace along the line because she was a good point guard and a fabulous shooter. There's a kid that I did not coach in high school, but I coached in grade school that was absolutely awesome. She got her points with the boys basketball, and before there was a 3-point line.
Who was that?
Susie Christie.
Susie Christie.
Susie Christie.
Susie Harlan now?
What'd you say?
Is that Susie Harlan now?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
And she was a fabulous player. I remember watching her in the, I guess it was, I don't know if it's the first round or second round of the region tournament when she was playing. And they had they was playing Allen County. Allen County had a girl named Susie Starks. Susie Starks went to Western on a full ride. Hattie was every bit as good as she was. Hattie had 36 points in that ball game. She played so hard. This was without a 3-point line now on the boys basketball. And I mean, she was a great player too. So I couldn't leave her out. Of course, I would probably, I don't know, man, you're making this work.
You've got 3.
I would have Rachel Obinsky, Misty Logan, Christy Perkins, Taryn Duncan.
Well, now you're naming more than 6 now.
Hey, you have a good bench. Now you
That's
had
pretty good kids, you know.
yeah, when you've coached as long as you do.
All right, let me ask you something else. If there was no Guffey twins and no Angela Brown, do you think Taryn Duncan and Christy Perkins and them win Class A?
Oh my Lord, hands down, I think they would. Yes.
I think they had a good shot even with them.
The Duffy kids, when they were playing, if I'm not mistaken, they got runner-up in the state.
Yeah,
they
that's
did.
right.
You know, and then you can't leave Monroe County out of all this too. I mean, before the Duffys come along, Monroe had some fabulous teams.
Right.
You know, so they won the Class A.
Feast, you coached 12 years of high school basketball. You coached grade school basketball and softball. You coached cross country for 10 years. Led a couple girls teams to win region. Had a couple individual boys qualify for state. After you retired, did you get any phone calls from other schools or colleges wanting you to come coach there?
I didn't have really nothing from colleges, but I had some calls from some other high schools to come and coach. And
What were those other high schools?
well, I got a call from Blackstone when their coach got out. I got a call from them, and I told them that my kids would kill me. I believed Malone, and I just couldn't do it. But it was kind of odd. I had about 3 years left in coaching, and I was sitting there at Greenwood one night, and a man came up to me. Of course, he's dressed in blue jeans and running around. He's dressed about like I run around everybody knows me, knows how I dress. I'm not known to dress up real nice. He walks up and sits down and he said, now I'm still coaching. He said, we would like to have you at Greenwood.
Huh.
And I said, the big basketball coach said, our coach is getting ready to get out. And he said, would you be interested in the job? And I said, Lord, no. I said, I'm so old. I said, I'm just ready to retire. I said, nobody wants me around anyway. And anyway, I just thought, I found out later he was cross-country coach, and I thought, what in the world? And come to find out he was the AD.
Is that right?
And I told him, I said, I've just got about 3 more years, so I'm going to retire anyway. And he said, well, that don't matter. He said, that coaches don't usually last for about 3 or 4 weeks down there.
3 years with you is better than 3 years with anybody else.
I don't know about that, but it was kind of funny at the time to me because here I am, right at the end of, kids kind of like young coaches. and my later life, I think they would be more glad to have 25-year-olds than somebody like me.
Well, one last question before we let you go, Feast. We know coaches get heated from time to time, and then later on after their career they can look back and laugh on it. Can you share with us a story, perhaps, when you were the most frustrated with a player, a ref, another coach on the other team or on your own sideline?
Boy, you know how much one question. We went to Clarkside Simons one time, and I was pretty upset. I can't call the referee's name, but I got pretty upset with the referee and said some things to him to get a technical foul to kind of fire my kids up. But that's probably most upset I've been maybe.
That was in the finals?
Yeah, I think it was the finals. Might have been semi-finals. I can't remember, but I did remember we were on the other team's home court.
Yeah.
And everything was going great. My kids were playing good. At halftime, it was just like, I don't know.
Who were you playing this year?
What'd you say?
Who were you playing in this game?
I'd rather not say who was playing because we were on their home court, and I think it would cause some hard feelings. the referee...
So there was home cooking going on, is what you're saying?
I don't know. It was just like something happened. He had caught... He's a great referee, too, loved him to death. But something happened at halftime. And it was just like he came out and every break went their way. It was just... I don't know. I just didn't feel good about it. I guess that's probably about as much upset. But now the kids... getting upset at him, yell, I screamed and yelled, stomped and slobbered and done everything else on. And I guarantee you, Mac will tell you the same thing I did.
I'm sure. Well, I experienced it with Mac. I never got to experience it with you.
What'd you say?
I experienced it with Mac. I never got to experience it with you.
But I can tell you right now, it was a show. It was all just to try to motivate the kids. Kids probably didn't know it at the time, but I guarantee you he'll tell you the same thing. It was all just acting.
Well, not all the time. Maybe most of the time. I don't know about all the time.
Well, I can tell you it's 90% of the time.
Yeah.
It's a motivational thing that most coaches can, a few of them actually get mad, but we have talked about it off the court. And go in there and maybe wake the team up one side and down the other, and then come back out and act like we're just mad and horny in the locker room, come back out there and laugh at each other or what we did. That just it's a motivational thing.
Yeah.
And some kids respond to that, and some kids don't. You got to find out what they respond to.
Right.
So I do know that my greatest teams responded to just going in the locker room and act like I was out of my mind.
Break a couple boards, then a couple lockers.
Yes, I broke a board. Actually, I went in one time and broke one, and I kind of learned by that it was a mistake. I gave it a swing and bounced off one wall, bounced off another, and went right over top of my sister's head. And just missed her, and I thought, Lord, if I hit kids. I didn't think about it ricocheting like that. And those kids, the kids that are good will get mad at the coach, and they will ask, like, I'm going to prove to you how good I am.
Yeah.
And they'll come out and they'll perform for you.
All right, Feast. Well, we appreciate you taking time out of your day to come on with us.
Okay, thank
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, so.
Now, that was some good stories. Now, I've had some coaches that I'm pretty sure were legitimately mad.
Yeah.
I know we played for John Allen for a little while. When he got mad, if that was acting, golly, give that man a Golden Globe or something. I mean, I've seen balls and shoes and
Shoes
other
in the
things
rafters.
fly across the gym. I've seen the. I mean,
We better not tell too much.
No, that's just if he was acting and some coaches were acting. That's pretty good. But Feasto, one of the all-time greats, one of the all-time class acts in women's basketball, at least around this part of the country. Some great stories, a lot of great success. We appreciate her coming on and talking to us.
Just to get back a little bit, we got cut off there by the break last segment, talking about the Hall of Fame, talking about things we maybe could do to fix the process. I know I mentioned giving voters unlimited votes. 50% of the voters use all 10 of their votes. They only get 10 now. And Tim Kirchin, I mean, he agreed. He said the same thing. If you've got 50% of the voters using all their votes, why not just make it unlimited?
Unlimited, correct. Yeah, I mean, if people aren't using them to begin with, and there are a lot of people who wish they had more already, eliminate a lot of the drama, a lot of the problems where we think about who doesn't get in, who gets in. If you had the stats to get in, you were one of the elite players of your day. You ought to be able to get in there. You ought to be able to get your picture up on the wall in Cooperstown. Regardless how many people. Like I said, it's not your fault who you retire with. Not your fault who all played when you played. You could have a great team with 5 or 6 great players on it. Things like that happen. And we look at Glavin and Maddox play together. Sometimes you just get a rare class where there's a lot of great people in it.
Yeah, and something that I heard this week that I'm not sure that I'm on board with, that I don't think necessarily is a bad idea, but seems like it'd be hard to implement. It would make the voting process even harder, is to have levels to the Hall of Fame. Say you want to put PED users in, you make a basement. You say all the PED users down here. Then you want to make this big thing out of being a first ballot Hall of Famer, fine. Instead of saying that, vote them in on a top level. Have them in on top level. Just, you have Hank Aaron, you have Willie Mays, you have Babe Ruth up here. Then you got Frank Thomas, other players down here.
Yeah, I don't know how you'd ever vote on it. I think you'd almost, if you're going to have a system like that, you'd have to almost leave it up to the Cooperstown Trust to kind of make the decision where people go on their own. I don't know how you'd ever vote that many different people, that many different levels. Balloting processes would get very confusing. And you might actually lose interest in it because it's so complicated people couldn't follow it. Now, if you had some kind of trust, some kind of elected board maybe set up to decide where people went once they got in, you might be left with some of the same problems, but it might help you a little bit in that situation.
Yeah, and the thing with me is the Hall of Fame is a museum of the greatest players to ever play baseball. Would you agree with that?
Well, the greatest people associated with baseball, players, managers,
right, contributors. The problem I have is if you go to the Museum of Natural History or whatever you want to go to, I'm guessing they're probably going to have the Holocaust in there.
Yep, there's going to be a lot of things about the Holocaust. There's going to be a lot of, even if you go to any museum in Europe, even a lot of art museums, you're going to see art with pictures of maybe the French Revolution. You're going to see a lot of things about slavery, especially museums in the South. All these bad things that happened, but are all part of history and all caused a great change in the world. A lot of those things were terrible, ended up causing change for the better. Those are all going to be in there because they were very important, very predominant in their day. And I think where you're leading with this is just because the PED users did something bad, maybe they broke some rules. A lot of them weren't actually breaking rules. They weren't even tested for these things. It wasn't against the rules at the time. It wasn't illegal at the time. You were allowed to do it. But maybe it padded their stats, altered their stats. They still played better than anybody else around them at the time.
Right. And one of my arguments is Barry Bonds.
Prime example. This is my argument here too.
Right. Barry Bonds, whether you like him or not, which I never really cared for him. I'm arguing for a lot of people I don't really care for. Barry Bonds was arguably one of the best players to ever play baseball, whether you don't like him or not. And you can't tell me that steroids can turn a guy into a complete non-Hall of Famer to the best player to ever play the game.
Yeah, I agree with you there 100%. like I said, I never liked Barry Bonds because he was kind of cocky. I didn't like him as a person, but I respected what he was capable of doing. Regardless whether or not he ever used steroids, whether or not he did anything against the rules of baseball, the man was one of the best hitters of all time. Great hitter, great run producer. And I couldn't do that. I could go take all the steroids I wanted to. You could take all the steroids you wanted to. You could get a lot of guys playing in the MLB right now who are world elite level athletes. Give them any kind of steroids, any kind of training. They're not going to be able to do that. He was a special person, regardless of his moral disposition.
Right. And, I mean, he was special. He was such a multi-tool player before the steroids. Arguably the best player in baseball then, but you have Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa hitting 70 home runs a year, and the media obsessed with them. So, I mean, he's looking at him saying, look at what I'm doing. I guess if I'm going to get noticed, I'm going to have to do this. And the thing with the steroid users is the media and fans didn't have a problem with it when they were doing it. They were doing it to please the fans.
Yeah, people loved it at the time. I mean,
chicks dig the long ball, man.
Yeah, everyone loved it at the time. Now we're looking back and our teams aren't doing this anymore. We realized that there was problems. It caused health problems. We didn't want to pass that message along. And now our teams can't hit like that. People can't do those kind of things anymore. And we look back and think, well, that's not fair. 20 years ago, this team was awesome, and they had all these players, and they weren't doing that. You know, there's always been people trying to find the best solution they could. We know that what was it? Willie Mays used to take amphetamines to keep himself awake. You know, he wouldn't get so tired. Those are things we test for now. But they weren't illegal then.
And Babe Ruth drunk beer. Maybe that somehow helped him before the game.
He drunk beer and milk.
It loosened him up, I guess. You know, I mean, I used to say that wasn't a PED.
And you know, you gotta think. Remember when we talk about this, a lot of these things aren't illegal and they weren't tested for. Creatine was one of the big problems. People have a big problem with that. That's not an anabolic steroid. It's something I can go buy right now and take. And it doesn't cause any major health effects, and it wasn't even tested for. Nobody thought anything about it till 10 years later. Now we're going back and saying, man, they shouldn't have been doing this. I agree that steroids is kind of a black eye on the culture of the game.
Right.
Culture of the game. But as far as the fan side and how things were happening and how the game played out, completely transformed the game of baseball, made it relevant again, brought it to the 21st century.
Right. Because, I mean, a fan like me, a die-hard baseball fan, likes to see what we've seen in the past 10 years or so in pitching.
Yeah, pitching and good defense.
Right. But mainstream sports fans don't care about that. They would rather see what they saw in the late 90s.
Yeah, we'd rather see two guys trying to break a home run record. We'd rather see these huge people hitting balls out of the stadium, into rivers, into the ocean. That's the kind of things that most of the world likes to see, kind of things that when you get those highlights, you draw people in, and they can start to understand what we love about it, the strategy on when you steal a base, when you send somebody, who you pitch against who. That's the things that we love, but you've got to get people in. You know, if my dad had set me down and said, look, we're going to watch this game, and it was a 1-0 game with the best strategy to it, the best managers, great pitching, I would have cared nothing about it when I was 5-6 years old. But you see these guys hitting big long balls, it gets exciting, gets it in your blood, and you want to know, you want to learn more about it. I think as bad as it was, it's a terrible example for kids. You know, it's bad on your health, kind of a black cloud over the sport. It did a lot to promote the sport and bring it to the level they're at. I think the Hall of Fame and the museum should at least remember that. Remember what these people did for us.
And somebody that, being a Reds fan, I saw a lot growing up that I want to make a quick argument for is Craig Biggio. 2 votes away this year. You got to take into account one of those votes is a guy who only voted for Jack Morris to kind of protest Jack Morris getting in. My thing with Biggio is if he plays in New York in the same time period that Derek Jeter plays, he's a Hall of Famer.
A Hall of Famer all day. Or if he plays for the Dodgers in L.A. or a big market team.
Yeah. I mean, you look at the stats here. Craig Biggio hits 3,060. Derek Jeter hits 3,316. We assume Derek Jeter's a Hall of Famer. Somebody we know that is a Hall of Famer went in 2011 at second base. Roberto Alomar had 2,724 hits. That's less than Biggio. He had 210 home runs. Him and Jeter both hit less home runs than Biggio. You look at the RBIs are in the same ballpark. And the argument I'll make for Jeter having a few more RBIs than Biggio, he's going to have all kinds of more opportunities.
He's going to have a lot more people on base around him, playing with arguably one of the most talented teams of all time in that late 90s, middle 90s Yankees era. He had a lot of people that he could hit and drive into scoring runs.
Right. I really believe that the voters are doing a disservice by not getting Craig Biggio into the Hall of Fame. And all that said, talking PED users, talking Biggio, talking everybody that should get in, talking about redoing the process, put Pete Rose in the Hall of Fame.
Spoken like a true Reds fan.
He has the most hits in baseball.
I agree with you. That might be a conversation for another day because I think you might go on a 2-hour rant just about that.
That's all I have to say.
Look,
put Pete Rose in the Hall of Fame.
Break. We'll be back. We've got another caller. A lot of stuff going on in our fourth and final segment. Stick with us.